said, stick by me, you'll be your guiding hand. But don't ask me what I think of you, I might not give the answer that you want me to.
Howdy, I'm Joe, and this is my show, Joe's Rides. In these videos, myself and my glamorous assistant Caden will show you what we get up to in my workshop in town, repairing mostly Land Rovers, along with a few classic cars, hot rods, American cars, all sorts. We'll also do some videos from my workshops at home, where you will see some of my projects, more cars, bikes, hot rods, odds and sods, you name it. So if you like petrol, oil, dirt and beer, then tune in. If you're a bit woke, left wing, if you believe in climate change, or you're vegan, then fuck off!
Howdy. Well, I did mention in a couple of videos ago about picking up a Honda Wing, which I now have. Always wanted one. Not been a fan of the ones with the fairings and the luggage, etc. Just like these ones, which they call the Naked Wing, I believe, GL 1000. This one is 78, 79. It is, as far as I'm aware, a UK bike. It had the straighter handlebars on, which I'm not a huge fan of either. I prefer these more upright American bars. So I've put some higher rise bars on, and obviously had to put longer throttle cables, brake hoses, etc. on. So that's all done. I've changed the engine oil out. We've changed all the spark plugs. It's a flat 4 engine. I've got 2 spark plugs here and obviously 2 the other side. A bank of 4 carburetors. Inside here live the cam belts. There's 2 cam belts, one for each bank of cylinders. I've replaced them. Put some brake pads in there, here and there, and just really giving it a good clean and a good service. And it's come out really well. It's a nice sunny day today, but it's still a bit fresh. But I'm looking forward to getting out on this one. So if you like this kind of thing, I think it's quite a smart bike.
Okay, well it's Sunday morning and I'm coming in the shed with the intentions of mounting the gearbox today, so then I can take jacks etc away, and the engine and gearbox will be sitting there on their own mounts. Somewhere I should have the original transit cross member, which would run from one chassis rail to the other. And I have turned this shed upside down yesterday before I closed it and went inside for a beer. And I've come out and the first thing I did this morning was turn this shed upside down, and I can't find it. And I've looked around all my other workshops, and I've looked up the side of the workshops, and I've looked here, there and everywhere. I also have a couple of storage barns just up the road where I keep a lot of my other cars and stuff. And there is some stuff off this van project there, so I went up there and no, it wasn't there. And I came back and I thought about it and I went back up there and I turned the place upside down and no, it's not there. So I've come to the conclusion that I must have sold said gearbox cross member along with the original transit manual box, which would be a bit unlike me because I never throw anything away or get rid of anything until the whole job's done, because it can bite you in the arse like it has done now. But in hindsight, it's no big shakes. It wouldn't have got me that far forward. So I've got this Ford Granada Mark III gearbox mount, which obviously is a long way from being wide enough to bolt up to the transit chassis rails. But I think I'm going to work with it and make something to then bolt that to the van itself. I was just looking, and I had a little bit of a concern that if you look at the back of the gearbox, it's not quite central in these cross members, and I was wondering why. So I have loosened off engine mounts and things, and twisted and pulled, and this is where it wants to be. It just doesn't want to go anywhere else. If I did make it go anywhere else, I'd be forcing it. But maybe a blessing when I do look back, and of course I look at the pinion on the rear axle on the diff. It is offset to one side slightly, like a lot of them are. So the fact that the prop shaft is slightly over to the offside of the car doesn't really matter at all, or maybe it's even meant to be like that. So at least my prop shaft will run true. So the next thing is I'm just playing with this jack underneath the gearbox, and I'm trying to decide what height to sit the gearbox. Now, the more I jack the gearbox up, the more clearance I get for my oil filter to clear my steering rack, which at the moment it's not. If I jack the gearbox up more, this effectively moves this filter housing backwards, really, and that would alleviate the problem. Although a standard Ford oil filter won't fit. I do have one. I took one off because I couldn't get it past the rack when I fitted the engine, and I do have a new one, and they're too wide. But I'm sure I can find something to fit. But it would have been nice to pull the gearbox up more and more, and then maybe I could have fitted an original filter. But that doesn't look like that's going to happen. And another good reason that it's not going to happen is it just occurred to me that I took a prop shaft off a Mark III Granada at a scrapyard, and I thought it had a rubber coupling up here on the flange, which then slides into the back of the gearbox. And I couldn't remember if it was the rubber coupling was at the gearbox end or at the rear diff end. So I've been back up the storage sheds again for the third time this morning to try and find the prop shaft off of the Granada that I took out of the scrapyard. And I found the prop shaft, and it was just as well I did go and look, because yes, at the gearbox end there is this flexible donut coupling. So obviously I need to allow room for that to rotate and move up and down very slightly when I mount this gearbox. I also stored up there the original transit prop shaft, which you can see is obviously a fair bit longer and a fair bit beefier. How I'm going to cobble these two together yet, I don't know, but whenever I've built cars I've always made my own prop shafts. I find it quite enjoying. We might even be able to split the two in half here in the middle, I'm not sure. But for now, I just have to slide this prop shaft into the back of the auto box just for now, to make sure I keep clearance for that rubber coupling. So there we go. Got nowhere so far. Been at it 3 hours. So here we go. Things are getting worse. It's always the same when you build cars. So I've had to let the gearbox down on the jack a fair bit for me to be able to get this Granada prop shaft slid into the back of the gearbox, and now we've got this issue here where this cross member, original transit cross member, is right in the way of it. So it sort of leaves me two options really. Option number one would be to make some phone calls, do some research to Ford guys, and find out if the A4LD gearbox was used in different Ford applications which used a prop shaft without this rubber coupling. And the chances of that, I think, are pretty high. I'm sure it was used in various other cars and maybe even commercials. I'm not sure. So there may be a prop shaft out there without this rubber coupling on, and I'm very impatient. So I'll have to be mindful. It's Sunday. There's a few people I could think to ring, but I'm not going to ring them on a Sunday and talk to them about prop shafts. I'd be pissed off. Or I cut away some of this cross member. The only thing this cross member is doing particularly is it's got the handbrake linkage mounted on it, but I think I might just be able to squeeze it up and past, just past here, so cut maybe right up to the handbrake linkage and then the same amount on the other side, and then I can jack the gearbox back up almost to my heart's content. Although again, the diameter of this rubber coupling donut is, I don't know without going to get a tape measure, but it looks to be about sort of 4 or 5 inches. So I've kind of got I've kind of got 2.5 inches from the prop shaft itself protruding, which would be less if it just had a conventional yoke on there. So I am tempted to try and do this another way. I think I might have bought this just for now and get on the phone tomorrow and pester someone about prop shafts, see what's out there. Okay, yeah, not going well today. So I've just cut and drilled a couple of bits of angle to go on either end of this car Granada cross member. They will line up with the existing holes in the cross member itself, and my thinking now is I'll put some bolts through there. I'm then going to weld this angle to some flat which is going to pick up on one of the cross members underneath the van, and I'm thinking of using some fairly long threaded bolts or threaded stud even, and that will give me some adjustment in the height. So I'll get it all up there, tack it all together, like I say, use some studding or some long threaded bolts, and then I can use the studding or bolts to effectively move the cross member up and down, so I can get the prop shaft angle and the clearance on the top of the gearbox exactly where I want it. On we go, on we go. Well, there we go. Mark III Granada gearbox cross member, adapted to fit Mark III Transit. I'm pretty happy with it. It's all strong, it's all good. My prop shaft coupling has plenty of room above it. So yeah, Sunday's mission is accomplished. I think I'm going to call it a day now. Cold beer awaits, and tomorrow, Monday after work, I'll come in here and just take this all apart, paint it and put it back together, and then we'll probably just clean up and take off some of the sharp edges where I've cut that cross member out for relief for the prop shaft donut. Happy days! Okay, next predicament for the Cosworth BOA engine into Ford Transit Mark III is the oil filter. So I did say that I had to remove the oil filter from the engine to get it in and past the power steering rack that I'd fitted. So now the engine's sat on its mounts and sat on the gearbox mount, etc, etc, is now where it's going to be, and I can't really change that. And the issue I have is this is the size of the filter to suit the Cosworth engine, and it's too wide. It's hard up against, well, I can't even fit it. It won't go in because it's up against the neck of the steering rack. So I've said before, all of my projects, without exception, have all ended up with Land Rover parts on, basically because I have a Land Rover garage, and that's what I do for a living. I've got quite a large stores of Land Rover parts, and I don't use them because they're any better or worse than any other parts. It's just sometimes I think, I wonder if I've got something that'll do the job. So yesterday I brought home a oil filter off a TD5 Land Rover engine, which is a lot less in diameter than the Cosworth one, and that screws on and fits a treat. Apart from the fact that the threaded stub on the Cosworth engine is a lot longer than the threaded stub on a TD5 engine. Now, there's two TD5 oil filters. In actual fact, there's three TD5 oil filters. There's the cartridge canister one like this. There's also a centrifugal spinner which has an oil filter in it. But there's another filter which is this. Now, this is a standard Land Rover TD5 oil filter, in that it's this length. To get this oil filter on and off a TD5 engine is a pain in the arse. So one of the aftermarket manufacturers come up with a good idea and made this, which is a lot shorter and makes fitting it much easier. Anyway, so I took one of these home back to the workshop here yesterday, screwed it on, and it screws on a treat. My reservation is this: you can see that there's a spring very close to the top of the thread here. From my understanding, there's two springs in a oil filter. One is in the very bottom, which is just purely there for them when they manufacture it, to keep all the guts of it pushed up to the top. And then if there's a bypass valve, which this one clearly has, there'll be a spring loaded bypass valve. When I'm screwing this oil filter onto the engine, because the stub of the oil filter, the threaded stub is so long, it's pushing this spring down. Now this screws all the way on, no problem, fits a treat. But I'm mindful that it's pushing this spring down. Now if it pushes this spring all the way down, then presumably it's going to be harder for the oil pressure in the event of a bypass to overcome that spring, because I've compressed it, and then if the filter blocked, then it wouldn't bypass. Now I fastidiously change the oil in my cars. The likelihood of this ever blocking up and needing to use the bypass is slim to none. But it's not right, is it? And I just don't know if I could live with it. So today I've been searching around for other oil filters, and I found this. I don't know what it's off. It's got a Ford part number on it, so I could easily Google the part number, and I think this one would do the job. But it's even smaller again. It's a very small filter. Not that it really matters, but the good news is the bypass valve spring is right down the bottom there, so the stub on the Cosworth engine wouldn't interfere with that. So I was just about to go with that until just before I come home from work. I just thought, I'll have a look at the longer TD5 oil filter, which I had on the shelf, which I never use anymore because I use the shorter ones because they're so much easier to fit. So I didn't give this a second thought, this one. In fact, it's probably the only one that's on the shelf, because I just haven't used this type for probably 10 years since the shorter ones came out. But looking at that, we've got loads more capacity, probably twice the capacity of the shorter stubby ones, and the bypass spring bypass valve is so deep down in there that I can hardly see it. So if this screws on, which I think it will, then I don't have any issues with the stub interfering with the bypass valve. It's thin enough to clear the steering rack, and it's of a slightly larger capacity than the others. So I'm going to try that now, and I think it's going to be a result.
So Saturday morning's come round again. Caden's here helping me again at the workshop at home. 1,000,001 jobs to do, obviously, and I've not really made a plan as to how to go about it. I just bumble along when I make these cars, and I quite think it's nice sometimes to do one aspect and then get off that and go and do something else. Stops it going so stale. Wiring. So proper rat's nest of wires which came off the car that the Cosworth engine was in. We've got a couple of VCUs, we've got an ignition module, we've got the fuse box, and we've got all the plugs that we need. So I'm going to have to work all this out, cut it around, and simplify it somewhat. Obviously we've got to then make that to the loom in the car as well. So it's a big task. I did take the, if you follow me, Kane, I did take the time to find out what wires, run our engine and what pins on the ECUs, and we've got 60 of them that I've written down. So we'll methodically go through those one by one. I don't think we'll need all of them. Some of them are relevant to things like air conditioning, if the car had air conditioning, and things like that. So I'm sure we can simplify this a bit, but needless to say, there's a lot of work to do there. But first things first, first thing I'm going to tackle, so this is our original Transit battery wiring. It's a bit scruffy, it's been got at, it's got terminals which have been put on not very well, and we've got to bear in mind that this wiring now is getting on for nearly 40 years old, so even these battery cables are getting a little bit hard, and I think I'm going to put some thicker, bigger ones in to carry more amperage, and we'll get a nice big battery in there. So first things first, is I'm going to cut all these main battery cables out, make some new ones, and also make some new earths today. Get the starter motor wired up, and maybe the heavy wiring for the alternator as well. So that would be a nice tick on a Saturday, would be to get the heavy side of the wiring done. If you come over to my bench, so we got ourselves some nice heavy battery cable. And the way I make these cables, and we'll come back and I'll show you later, is I'm going to cut away quite a bit of the insulation. I'm then going to use one of these copper tube terminals. Obviously they're different internal diameters, and the eyes on the ends are different diameters, so there's a selection box there. We'll decide which ones we need, and obviously we want some battery terminals on the other end of these. So yeah, I'm going to cut back the insulation a fair bit back, and then I'm going to use this crimping tool, which you can adjust the wheels on to the different size of the tube terminals, and these are brilliant things. They squeeze the terminal from all around its tail there, and it makes a really good join. Then once I've done that, I'm going to get some solder and this flame gun and drizzle some solder down the tube as well onto the wire. And then we're going to use a little bit of heat shrink, which will be slid up the cable like so, and then we'll slide that forward over the end of the terminal, and then we'll give that a gentle heat, and that will seal it all up. And that's the reason why I cut a fair bit of the insulation back. Plus that insulation will get slightly melted by the flame when I heat it up and add the solder. So yeah, these crimpers along with the solder makes for a join that, in my opinion, just will never ever go wrong. So that's how I'm going to do those. So we'll get cracking, and we'll make some earths as well. Okay, so the first connection I've addressed and made is this one here. This one here will bolt onto the positive side of the battery, onto the positive battery terminal, and this effectively powers the rest of the van. So it's going to go, my guess is this will go up to the fuse box, and from there it will do everything. It will do headlights and wipers and all the functions of the van, less most of the engine, although it will send some feeds back down this way. Yeah, I wasn't happy with that one. Once I peeled all the insulation back, I found this. It's been got at before. It's a bit grotty and horrible, so that's for the bin. So that's our first one, and I'll just quickly show you what else we're going to do. So as I said before, we're going to do all the main cables today. So this one's going to go down from our positive battery terminal down to our starter motor solenoid. We'll then make another one to go from the starter motor solenoid to the back of the alternator. So as with all the connections and wiring on the van, everything's got to be right. This is the way I do it. Some people might say it's the wrong way, but so I tend to cut a bit more insulation back from the copper than perhaps most people would, because I'm now going to crimp this tube terminal on, and once I've crimped it on, I'm then going to get my flame gun, and I'm going to heat that up and drizzle some solder down there as well, and that really is belt and braces. Then when I do that, it would have burnt all this insulation off and would have made a mess and would contaminate the solder. So that's why I cut a little bit more off than what people think I should. And then once I've done that, then the heat shrink will go over the top of that. I'll warm it up gently, and that will make it waterproof all at the same time. If you look at these tube terminals, you can see that they're marked, and this one is marked with a 25. That dictates the size of the tube itself, and then I can adjust these wheels to bring round the 25, and that space in there, that's the jaw that we're going to use to crimp those. I'm not sure if I can do it all one-handed, but I'll try. So we've set our tube terminal in there, and that should now be crimped on really tight, which it is. It's a really good way of doing these. So that just leaves now for me to heat that up, and I'm going to drizzle some solder around there. That will creep down into that tube terminal, heat shrink over the top, then we'll cut it to length, and then we'll do the next one. So there you go, that's that end finished. And then I've just gone around it with a length of Spiro wrap, because between the starter motor and the body, there's going to be a little bit of heat there, and I I suppose I could say I put it on there in case that it might rub on anything, but I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to route that nicely. So this is going to go down on our starter motor here. I'm going to clip it into these original chassis loops just here. Tie it to this original loom up through this loop, and then it'll be ready to connect up to our battery up here, along with this one, which will power up to the fuse box, etc. So there's M1 done. Like I say, I'm going to do the alternator to starter motor next. Then we'll do some earths, and then just for a giggle later on, actually, once we've got some oil in it, just for the sake of it, we could just plonk a battery on here maybe and live up the exciter wire for the starter motor and just spin it over, see what it sounds like. Okay, so starter cable to batteries done, and as I said, I'm going to do alternator to starter motor solenoid now. I'm kind of wishing that I'd done this in black cable now. It's pissing me off a little bit, but I'm not going to make it again. Just have to live with it. Positive battery cable should be red, but I'm not liking the look of it. I wish it was black. I'm just going to forget I've done that. From the back of the alternator, the output wire of the alternator, we're going to go to the starter solenoid. And I've been thinking about how I'm going to route it. And my options are as follows. I could come out along the back of the engine, up along the bulkhead, all the way down, back down here and back to the starter solenoid. And it just seems a long way to go, really. The other option would be to come off the back of the alternator and maybe come onto this front cross member, but we may have a problem there, which brings me on to something else actually we could just have a quick chat about. So this is the standard Ford Transit radiator, which I took out when the engine was Pinto powered, 4-cylinder 2-litre Pinto powered, and obviously it fits a treat, and it fits get it the right way around, Joe. It kind of fits something like that. Could I use this? Well, I could. The outlets on it completely in the wrong place, i.e. the top hose one is at the bottom of the radiator and vice versa on this side. The other reservation is it going to be big enough? I don't really think so. Obviously, I'm going to have to aid it with a cooling fan. So I went and bought a Ford Granada, Mark III Ford Granada auto radiator. I like this radiator because it's old school. It's got a copper core, which I like. And obviously the outlets would line up with our Cosworth engine as they should. But there is a massive problem with it. And the problem is this, is if I stick the radiator, and I got quite excited because the lugs on the bottom dropped straight in the holes on the Transit cross member, but bonnet landing panel comes along here and is at this height, so this is way too tall, unfortunately. The other advantages of it are that it's got the facility for the transmission oil cooler lines, so that leaves me the options of looking for another sort of radiator that will fit in that fairly shallow gap that we have, or continue with this. And I think I'm going to continue with this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this for a minute. Is I'm going to cut half of this cross member away and then box it back in, so then I can effectively drop the radiator down behind this cross member. It's a real pain in the arse because when I was in the early stages of repairing the van, this cross member was rotten, and I had a good weekend repairing it front and back, only now to cut it up. But I think that's what I'm going to do. Then we know that we've got the correct sized radiator with the inlets and outlets all in the same place. I can connect up the transmission cooler lines, and I think it'll be the way forward. So that's for another day. That's a fairly major task to cut that out, box it back in, make it look right, put some strength back in here, obviously. So yeah, I digress. So the other option was to bring the wiring from the alternator out and along the front cross member and back to the starter motor. But I'm not going to do that because we're going to be cutting some of this out to fit that radiator. And again, it's making it quite a long sort of route. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my wire. I'm going to use some black wire instead of red this time, and I'm going to come out up here, maybe up above this tensioner bracket behind the power steering pump, and I'm going to bring it along the front of the engine here, get some P-clips, and then go back to our starter motor. I'm going to wrap this in Spiro wrap as well, obviously to protect it, and it will just make it look tidier. So that's what I'm going to do next. Alternator to starter solenoid, and we're going to come round the front of the engine and clip it on there. Okay, so this is the alternator loom I've just made up. I had some 3mm cable, which is big enough. In fact, I'm sure it's big enough. But I'd like something a little bit bigger, and I haven't got anything here. And as you may know, I'm impatient. I like to get things done. So I've doubled it up. So we've actually got 2 lengths of 3mm now going from the alternator output wire to the starter solenoid. And I've also, within the loom, incorporated a smaller diameter wire for the alternator warning light wire. And they've been taped up and wrapped up in shrink wrap now. So we're going to poke them in and connect them up to the alternator, bring them around the front of the engine, and then I'll get to this end and I can cut it all to length, connect it up to the starter solenoid. So these terminals we've used here, these are crimp terminals that you use with crimping pliers, but they have the added benefit of having a heat shrink sleeve on them. So you pop them on your wire, crimp up the ends to secure the wire in the terminal, and then again heat up with a gas torch or even a lighter, any sort of heat source, and that shrinks on and gives this really bites and gives it a good waterproof connection. Again, very unlikely to give us trouble in the future. So we'll get this on now. Okay, so we're pretty happy. We ticked a few boxes on Supervan 3 this morning, particularly with the wiring. Got the oil drained, got some fresh oil in there. Caden's been working on the bonnet slam panel, which was quite rusty, and he's got that more or less ready for paint. Which just leaves me to have a little talk about this week's magical mystery box. So I know you've all been gagging to see, as always, what's in this week's box. So let's take a look, shall we? In this week's magical mystery box is a peanut. Now, this week's chat isn't just a chat about what's in the box. This is also a warning, because I think everyone needs to know where peanuts come from and how they're made. And after me telling you about them, it might be something that you might consider not to eat again. So peanuts, here one is. It's a nut stroke pea, hence the name peanut. Now, peanuts are made from nuts and peas. There's a company, a worldwide company, that goes around to engineering companies, garages, all places such like that use nuts, and any nuts that don't fit or they're worn out or they've been dropped on the floor, etc., etc., they're all swept up and these companies collect them. They also go to farmers and they collect all the peas which are misshapen or mouldy or not fit for use. And then what happens is they all go to the factory where they're joined in harmony, like these two are here, and they're coated with a paint and then dipped in salt, and they end up looking like this. So what you need to remember is next time you're sitting in a pub and you have a bag of peanuts or you buy some from the supermarket, underneath that salty brown coating is actually a pea and a nut. And I recommend you don't eat them because they don't do you a lot of good. I quite like them, but think about it before you eat them. Fuck hell. So this down here is some of the shit and shoddy wiring that I've cut out this morning. Yeah, that's all ready for the bin. So where we are now is we've got our positive battery cable all made up, going down to the starter solenoid. We've got our alternator output wires and warning light wire coming across the front of the engine. That's all Spiro wrapped. Couldn't bear looking at that red battery cable anymore, so taken that back off and wrapped it up in black Spiro wrap. And I've just chucked a battery on here very, very temporarily with a couple of battery terminals. Not going to use these battery terminals. I've ordered some better quality ones that I want to use. I think tomorrow, Sunday, I'll come back in here. I'll bring the alternator output wires back up to this. It's got the original plug there. We'll cut this plug off and then bring up some new wires again with that 3mm black wire up to those, along with our warning light wire. So that will tick off the alternator circuit and starter circuit. So yeah, this is just laid on here, and I think Caden's just filled up with oil, enough for us to spin it over. So hopefully we'll finish today on a high note. I'm just going to hotwire the starter solenoid, and hopefully this will spin over. Yeah, then tomorrow I'm going to come in and make some more earths. I've got an earth going from the small earth going from the battery to the body, and I've got an earth going from the battery to the engine. I'm going to put another earth on the gearbox somewhere, and maybe another one somewhere. In my opinion, you can't have enough earths. Sometimes if you don't, earths can find an easier path in the way of things like throttle cables or thinner wires, and before you know it, you're driving an inferno around. So I'm going to put plenty of earths on this car. Body to battery, battery to engine, engine to body, here, there and everywhere. I like an earth. So, if this spins over, I think it'd be kind of you to like and subscribe. Come on, girl.